In this video, I will explain the Hobbesian trap. I'll begin with a quick introduction to his Leviathan theory, how this leads on to the trap, and how to avoid the trap. Thomas Hobbes was an English philosopher who rose to fame in the 17th century. One of his more famous works was called Leviathan, or the matter, form and power of a commonwealth ecclesiastical and civil. A bit of a mouthful, so most people just call it Leviathan. The book was essentially his political treatise on why an absolute monarchy was a good and effective form of government. To justify this, Hobbes began by explaining what he felt was the nature of men. All humans fear death and violence. Left to their own devices, the natural state of humans is uncivilized and violent. Hobbes felt that due to competition over scarce resources, greed, and fear, humans will naturally fight with each other. Consider the following quote from the book. In such condition there is no place for industry, because the fruit thereof is uncertain, and consequently no culture of the earth, no navigation, nor the use of commodities that may be imported by sea, no commodious building, no instruments of moving and removing such things as require much force, no knowledge of the face of the earth, no account of time, no arts, no letters, no society, and which is worst of all, continual fear and danger of violent death, and the life of man solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. It paints a bleak picture. Compared to today, the average medieval man was more likely to have a violent death, and life in general was nasty, brutish, and short when compared to today. Enter the Leviathan, a fancy word that effectively meant the king or the state. The Leviathan is something or someone that had a greater authority which everyone respected and submitted to. The people agreed to behave themselves and work together, and in return the Leviathan guarantees their safety and maintains law and order. Notice that with the Leviathan in place, the natural fear of violence and death has gone, leaving the people free to contribute usefully to society without worrying about being killed. For the Leviathan to be effective, people have to believe that it will punish people appropriately. And punishments are violent. In effect, the state controls all the violence in the country. And this is the paradox. In order to reduce violence in the country, the state itself has to be violent. It has to threaten violent punishment, and the threat has to be credible. Only then will people feel safe. Now, this all sounds very well, but it only explains how to control people within a single country. When there are two competing countries, you end up with two Leviathans, two competing Leviathans, and each one has guaranteed the security of its own citizens. Eventually, each one will become fearful of the other, afraid of a violent confrontation with the other. To temper this fear, you invest in defense. And when you see the other side buying more weapons, you become more fearful, and so you buy more weapons. In this way, the situation escalates, with each side threatening more and more violence. This is the Hobbesian trap. Of course, the trap exists at any scale. Just two men, without an effective Leviathan to control them, can also fall into the Hobbesian trap. So how can we avoid the trap? You might think the solution is to introduce another Leviathan to control the two parties. Yes, this might well work, but it really only shifts the problem up one layer. Saying that the solution will always be to introduce another Leviathan just leads to an infinite regress. Instead of turtles all the way down, we have Leviathans all the way up. Another solution is to find something that both parties want and then persuade both sides that this mutual desire can only be achieved if they work together. If both sides realize that they need to work together, they are unlikely to fight with each other. Another solution is to address the fear, convince both parties that they do not have to fear each other. This is easier said than done and can take time. For example, cultural awareness and integration programs can reduce this fear between two groups. So there you have it, a quick explanation of Hobbes's Leviathan theory, the paradox of using violence to reduce violence, the escalation of the Hobbesian trap, and ways to avoid or defuse the trap.